Hey everybody, this is Steve. I'm coming at you on Monday after I got back from my conference out of town. And I wanted to record this brief video to talk about some changes with the schedule and to give you sort of a rundown about what's going to happen over the next month or so in the class. So, what I'm looking at on my computer screen here is actually, because I'm recording this my camera up there, I'm looking at my screen here, is actually the schedule. And I made some slight changes that start in week 11. So if you go look at the schedule page from week 11, which is today, March 24th, through the end. So we're going to start talking today, this first part of the week. I know you're finishing up your peer reviews for the informal report assignment. That's due, the peer review for that's due by the end of the day on Monday. The final version is due by the end of the day on Wednesday. And then we're also getting into some discussions more about the formal report stuff. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the collaboration options, which is why I have you reading Chapter 4 from a textbook I wrote about collaboration, and why we'll talk a little about Doodle and Google Hangouts. I'm going to come back to this topic in just a second. But anyways, and then and then I want you to continue talking within your peer review, your group for your formal recommendation report about how you're going to go about that. The end of this week, besides, well, let me get to the next part. The next part of next week, we'll do, there's one reading on report format and final production for formal reports. And we'll talk about some of the sorts of contributions that some of you may make in terms of other readings and things like that, too. We'll talk a little bit more specifically in the second half of this week about the specific parts I'm expecting to be in your group's recommendation slash formal report on the initiative that we'll be doing at EMU. And that'll make more sense when we start talking about that specifically in the second part of next week. Now, or the second part of this week. Now, when you look at the rest of the schedule, you'll see week 12, week 13 are both pretty much dedicated to working on this formal report. This is opportunity space I'm giving to you and your classmates to do the research, to do the collaborative work, to start talking about how to put together the video presentation or put together some kind of presentation. For us also talk about strategies about how we're going to make these presentations available online. But the point is I'm trying to give you as much time as you can, free of everything else, to sort of devote time to that. You'll also notice along the way I'm looking for some progress reports because I want to make sure that people stay on task. But the point is this, there's a lot of time I'm devoting to this for just working on these projects. So don't squander that time. Certainly don't wait till the last minute. Make use of that time and make use of me as a resource. If you have questions about how to do things or about how successful initiatives might be or whatnot, I'm here to help because even though I'm the main client, I'm also, a consultant for you in this project as well. The presentation of your recommendation report, and we'll see what format that takes, is going to be due on Monday, April 14th. And again, the reason why I say we'll see what format this takes, because I haven't done this online before. I've done this in a face-to-face class before, but I haven't done this online. So the goal is hopefully we'll be able to collaborate. You'll be able to collaborate with your group members to put something together online together that you can use to present on your group's projects. So it'll be something short, probably about 5 or 10 minutes, in which you, as if you were presenting it before a class. We'll talk about some strategies about how to do that. But for example, it might mean a slideshow that has that's made into a movie that has a soundtrack to it. It might mean something like maybe some of your groups are local and you actually videotape people giving a presentation and post that on YouTube and post that. It could be some kind of collaborative thing where each of you in the group adds some kind of contribution that is you post to YouTube and then someone in the group sews it all together. I'm open to all kinds of different creative possibilities. You tell me what you think would be the best way for your group to present this to everybody else, because presenting it to everybody else is going to be a key part of that assignment because, the better your presentation, the better your chances are at winning the bid, as it were, and being the group that is selected as the initiative winner for the assignment. Anyway, on Wednesday, which would be April 16th, is the group recommendation reports and individual recaps are due. So what that means is that on that, by the end of the day on that Wednesday, first, every group needs to have their final formal report and formal recommendation report completed and available for my review and also for the review of other people in the class. And you need to send to me your individual memo that recaps your participation in the project and how you think things went. And that you'll send that directly to, you'll post that in the grade book on EMU Online, just like we have done with all these other assignments. April 18th is the Friday before Easter, Good Friday, and so EMU is on spring recess. And then the last day of classes is April 21st. I'm leaving that open right now to give people a chance to do evaluations, which you can do online for this class, and also in case we're late on something, hopefully we won't be, and hopefully we'll be all resolved with that. Any kind of like final work, things that are outstanding in terms of revisions or anything else that's delayed in some fashion is due by the end of time of the course, which is Monday, April 28th at 5 p.m. There isn't a final for this course though, so really once everything is in on April 16th, you should know what you're going to end up with as a final grade for the class probably about April 21st or so. Certainly before, you'll certainly know before April 28th. Let me go back to this collaboration issue for a second on this project and give you a little bit of a sort of a rundown of how I'm thinking about this. The thing that's interesting about collaborative projects is that on the one hand, students tend not to like them. And they tend not to like them because it requires you to facilitate things with other people. It requires a give and take in terms of agreement and disagreement. It's just more time consuming to sort of work with other people. It can be more frustrating working with other people. On the other hand, teachers tend to like these assignments for two basic reasons. One is because I think that they're pedagogically very valuable. I think that students learn a lot from working with each other on projects like this. And the second reason is because, and this may come as a shock, most people in real world settings, particularly in professional writing real world settings, have to work with other people. You're usually not the master of your own domain, and so you're going to have to sort of collaborate. So, in other words, this is the point of this is a real world exercise in how to collaborate with others. Now, in my view, and I talk about this in the reading that I assigned in the chapter from the textbook that I wrote, there's essentially two kinds of collaboration. I mean, two extremes of collaboration. One kind of collaboration is for writers to sit next to each other and to write everything together. And there are writers who do this. There are writers who basically will sit at the same desk at the same time, and they'll write each sentence together. In other words, they'll write a sentence and they'll agree on it, and they'll do that for the whole thing. Then there's very distant collaboration. The best model for this that I think I've seen is something we're all familiar with in this part of the country for sure, which is the assembly line. That is, because the assembly line is, after all, a collaborative activity in terms of building a car. It's just that, this person puts in the seat belt, this person puts in the steering wheel, this person puts in the engine, this person drives it away, or something like that. Now, the advantage of very close collaboration is that everybody knows what's going on at all times. I mean, if you're sitting right next to each other and you're writing each sentence, you have a part of it. The disadvantage is it's very, very time consuming and not really realistic unless you're a couple of people or a group of people who, you're at the same time and place for a long time. The advantage of that distant collaboration, of that assembly line kind of collaboration, is it's very efficient. I mean, after all, that's the reason why assembly lines were created in the first place, is to optimize work efficiency. The downside of it is that people on the assembly line can feel pretty disenfranchised because the person who's putting the seatbelt doesn't know anything about the person who's putting the engine, things like that. Now, what I'm suggesting for you that you guys do for collaboration is something in between the two. Okay. In other words, I'm not expecting everyone to be working together all the time on this. That would not be realistic. But one of the problems that happens sometimes with these collaborative projects is that everybody divides stuff up into such small parts that there's not a connection for the whole. So there's a couple things about that that you want to try to do to maximize that connection for the whole project. The first thing is that somebody has to be in charge, or somebody has to be at least the manager of the project. Which is to say that there should be some kind of one, pick someone in your group to be the person who kind of, helps marshal the forces here a little bit and helps try to bring things together in some sort of unified space. If nothing else, it'll be easier to share Google Documents and the what and the like if it's all in one person's initial directory and it's shared with other people in that group. The second thing is that figure out what other people are going to do in the group, but make sure that everybody knows what everybody else is doing, if that makes sense. In other words, you can divide up the labor just as long as everybody is aware of how the labor is being divided. The third thing is that when it comes to writing the report, when it comes to actually putting the report together, you're going to want to do that collaboratively, but you're also going to want to agree on some things stylistically. For example, is it going to be first person or third person? Probably third person. Is it going to be present tense or past tense? Are you going to use this? Make sure that you use the same terminology for particular things throughout the report. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those sort of style guidelines as we go along. But those kinds of like style guidelines, if you can all agree on that, will go a long way towards writing a report and giving a presentation that looks like it really is a collaborative effort as opposed to something that four people kind of piece together. Now, one last thing in terms of grading this, at the end of the project, when everything gets handed in and you've done some version of a presentation, and we'll figure out how that's going to work, and everything is all done, everyone in the group will turn in the group's report, and you will individually turn in a writer's memo that's similar to the kind of project memos that you've been doing all semester, with one important difference. In this project memo, you will need to say what it is that you did as part of the collaborative project, what it is that you think other people in the group did as part of this collaborative project, and what it is that you think, what grade you think everyone in the group should receive as a result of their work. This is, as I like to call it, the speak now or forever hold your peace clause of the collaborative process. Because if it turns out that the collaborative process works out great, and most of the time it does, frankly, if it works out great, then this part of the report of your individual project memo can be quite brief, because if you think everybody pitched in and did what they should have done, you can just say, this is what everybody did, and I think everybody should get an A. And then you're done. On the other hand, if you do have someone who's a member of your group who is kind of habitually not doing her or his part, well, this is your chance to speak out about that. And if the majority of people in a group really do feel like one or two people didn't pull their weight, I will account for that when I assign the grades. So, like I said, this is your chance to provide some sort of feedback. Because I think that that's one of the fears about collaboration is that someone's going to be skating by and not doing their share of the work and still get a good grade. And that's not a good feeling for anybody. Okay, so that's the basic sort of gist on that. The other thing I want to point out is be sure to take a look at the stuff on Doodle and Google Hangouts that I have mentioned below here. Doodle is a software that you can use for scheduling things, and I use that when I need to schedule meetings with colleagues of mine and with sometimes with groups of students too. I'll use Doodle as a way of creating a space where okay, these are the possible times that we could, meet and do things, and then people can vote on and determine what are the best times available. I find this an invaluable software, and it's a lot easier to do than just send an email saying, "Are you free on Tuesday?" "No, not free on Tuesday. How about Wednesday?" You know what I mean? So check out Doodle.com. Very, very useful. The second thing is Google Hangouts. Again, super duper useful because what it allows you to do is video conference with each other um, from wherever through Google, and you all have a Google account, and for free. It doesn't work very good for large groups, but after all, your groups are all pretty small. For groups of 4 or 5 or so, it works great. And as long as you can all agree on the same time, it doesn't matter that some of you are on the West Coast. It doesn't matter that some of you are, spread all over Michigan or whatever. If you can agree in the same time, Then you can all log in at the same time, and not only can you talk with each other, which can oftentimes be a lot more efficient than just emailing with each other, but you can share documents and share images and things like that. So I would strongly encourage you to use both of those tools, and any of these other tools that you can use for facilitating collaboration in an online format. This is a key lesson to sort of like try to get a hold of in terms of that real world application, because in the real world, people collaborate all the time on major projects, certainly projects much more major than this one, without ever actually being in the same place at the same time. So you shouldn't have to, limit yourself to the idea of, just meeting in the library on a Tuesday night or something like that. You can meet electronically through these kinds of spaces as well. Okay, as is always the case, if you got questions, concerns, feelings, emotions, you should ask them below, and I'll keep seeing you online.